Good morning, everyone. I'm going to join Mark and say that this is actually one of my favorite conferences as well. So I'm very happy to be here with you guys this morning. And wait, let me take this. So today we are actually kind of lucky with Caspar because we are going to present to you two projects, two papers in a row, but they both stem from the same big project. And this big project, we actually started it 2 years ago, exactly 2 years ago in this very conference. So for the next, 50 minutes, you're going to see what we have done so far over the last 2 years. And if you hate what we're going to say, if you think it's the most stupid thing ever, well, can happen, you can blame Francesco. He's the one who met us Smith, so Francesco, it's on you. And if it's a success, it's on us. So let's do it that way. Okay, so this is going to be the structure of the presentation. What I'm going to do is that I'm going to start by describing what is our project. Our project is named Wellbeing. And I will try to explain to you what is our main goal and how we are going to be busy basically for years with this project. And then I will move on with the presentation of fantastic well-being results, which is one of the projects of Wellbeing. And then Caspar will present you reversing the reversal, but he's going to present to you the latest the latest version, the new results, because I think many of you already heard me talking about reversing the reversal too many times. So it's time for Caspar to take over on this. All right, so Wellbeing. Now I like to start my presentation with this graph. I don't know if Chris is still in the room, but I mean, this graph is actually fantastic. I'm sure most of you have seen it already. It shows the fraction of academic papers related to happiness over time by field. And what we can see is that on the academic side, there has been a growing interest with respect to questions related to happiness. And we are accumulating knowledge across disciplines. And on the other side, there's another force, which is that we also have, and Alberto, you mentioned it yesterday, we have a growing number of initiatives to try to implement well-being framework into policymaking. And also, Kun, you talked about it this morning. And Alberto, you mentioned the OECD. To this, I will add New Zealand, for instance, or the Green Book in the UK. So on one side, we have more and more knowledge coming from us, the so-called experts. And on the other side, we have policymakers, and they want to know more about well-being. How can we use it? And so I think Caspar and I were convinced that we're at a sort of crucial moment where we need more than ever to curate the existing knowledge with respect to well-being research. And this will be useful and fundamental, I think, both for policymaking. And here we're going to be agnostic about policymaking. If you're a policymaker and you just want to look at well-being just as an indicator, fine. If you want to use well-being to do, select choice between policy alternatives, fine. That's not our point today. With well-based project, absolutely not the point. It can also be useful for researchers because it will help us synthesize our findings. It will also help us identify research gaps. And also, it will help us to better understand and improve our practices. So this desire to curate the knowledge is at the heart of the Well-Based project. So what is the Well-Based project now in practical terms? Well, basically, it's a two-step procedure. The first procedure is the creation of a database that will gather all the well-being results produced by the field. And here, I can tell you that after 2 years of work, we finally managed to reproduce the universe, like the full universe of all the most recent evaluative subjective well-being regressions published in top econ journal. I will come back to this in a minute. So we managed to create this huge database, and it will keep expanding, of course, over time. And the second step in Wellbeing is actually to analyze this database and to inform policymakers and researchers. So Wellbeing, what is it? How did we build it? Well, we started by a Google Scholar search. Last iteration was in January 2024. And we typed the keywords, life satisfaction, country ladder, subjective well-being, with and without hyphen. We looked at papers published between 2010 and December 2023. And we looked, for the moment, at top 30 econ journal, and we used the REPEC ranking. And at the end of the day, we ended up with 345 published articles. And so what are we looking for exactly in Wellbeing? We are looking for this kind of output. Here you have a paper from Sarah Flesch. And what we are looking for is this type of table. You have here 5 life satisfaction regression. And in her paper, Sarah was looking at the effect of a reform in Switzerland. Fine. What do we want to do with this paper? We actually want to go to the replication package we want to reproduce the regression to extract the coefficients, not only the printed coefficients, also the controls, and also all the meta information that's surrounded this regression. The R-squared, the number of observation, but also the adjusted R-square, for instance, or the scale, how many points on the scale. So we are trying to extract as many information as possible. And so this kind of papers, of course, we started with 345 papers. We checked them all one by one, and actually only 55 articles met the criteria. Only 55 articles had at least one new subjective well-being regression in the paper. And so just to give you an idea of where we are as of today, we have replicated 45 published articles. For 3 of them, we're talking with the authors. I hope it's going to work. We're still in discussion with them. And for 7, we won't be able to replicate them. So that's why this one, I think we're going to forget about them. These are papers based on administrative data. So the likelihood of us having access to this data is almost impossible. So, and just to give you an idea of the scale of this project. So we spent 2 years on this for the moment. We replicated 45 articles, which means more than 1,000 regression, more than 50,000, almost 50,000 point estimates. And to give you an idea also of how fast we are working, I guess, I also looked at my presentation that I gave last year here. And last year, we only replicated 5,000 point estimates. So in a year, we multiplied by 10 the size of Wellbase. And sure, here you could tell me, yeah, but why are you doing such a big effort? There are already some database that exists. Well, I think that Wellbase has very key advantages. One of them is that we are not limiting ourselves to a geographical area. We are not looking at well-being in Luxembourg. We are looking at all the evidence from everywhere about well-being. We're also looking at what I was telling you before, the whole universe, the whole replicable universe. We are not cherry picking papers on the basis of, oh, there is this author in the paper, so this is the best coefficient we can take from income. No, we are looking at everybody, we are gathering all the knowledge. And I think the most important point is that, as I was telling you, we are replicating the regressions, which means that this well-based data, it can be used as a laboratory to test your econometric tools. And typically, when I'm thinking about, like the booking.com paper that you have here, without any problem, we could almost open my computer and we could put your fixed effect in all the world value survey papers and check whether the results hold. So that's exactly what we want to do with Wellbase. It's about informing and trying to develop new tools. And so this is where we are today with this project. We have, for the moment, 4 projects in the pipeline. The first one is fantastic well-being that I will present to you in a second. Then Caspar with reversing the reversal. And we're also talking with Katia Oparina to talk about median regression versus OLS. And we're also talking with Dan Benjamin and his team actually to scale up their project about scale use heterogeneity and calibration question. So this is where we are as of today. And now, Caspar, how much time do I have left? Yeah, 10, yeah. Yeah, thank you. Okay, so let's move to now the presentation. So for this presentation, before starting to talk about the paper, I just would like, by show of hand, who understands the title? Who has the reference behind fantastic well-being results and where to find them? Okay, so going to try to be politically correct here. I see a generation fixed effect, right? Like a kids of the 90s fixed effect. Okay, for those who don't know, this is a reference to Harry Potter, Fantastic Beasts and where to find them. So I think we have a cool title. I'm not sure we have a cool paper yet, so that's first step validated, but then we'll see. Because I think for the moment, we have more like a collection of facts about Wellbase. I'm going to show you, sorry, this series of facts. Some of them might be very interesting, some may absolutely be not. During the Q&A, you can actually tell me what you like the most and what you think is completely useless. So let me start with the most important question about these papers, these 45 papers, where to find them? Well, here you see the distribution or the histogram of the number of papers per review. And so you can see that Aristat, Review of Economic and Statistics, the EJ, Journal of Development Economics, the AR are the, with quote, the homes, the top, top journals home of well-being papers. So it's a good news for us. Like you can make it to top 5 if if this is important for you, you can make it. like the door is not closed. But to this, I would add a pinch of salt. because here I showed you the replicated articles. But for many of these papers, well-being is not the center of the analysis. In many of these papers, well-being is just, in the appendix table A127, you have one regression, it's completely hidden at the end of the paper. So I think this histogram is more accurate. Here in green, you see the number of papers that are really about well-being. And so you can see that overall, again, the door is not completely open, but you have some very specific patterns. I'm thinking about here, JDE, the Journal of Development Economics. They have many papers with well-being, but actually only one is about well-being per se. So I think this is something over the last 15 years, since 2010. Oh, I didn't do it, but you know what? Well, I'm going to remember this. Okay, so this is about where to find them. Now let's try to understand a little bit more, how do we do this paper? What is the recipes that we're applying to these papers? Usually one of the debates that we have in the field is, shall we consider well-being as cardinal or ordinal? And just, thinking about yesterday, I heard one presentation with nonlinear model and all the other presentations were about linear. So I'm not sure there is really a debate, but let's see what we find with our regressions. So here we have less than 2% of order probit and ordered logits. So saying that there is a debate when it comes to ordinal and cardinal measures is not true. There is no debate. As a field, collectively, we consider subjective well-being as cardinal. We use OLS, we use fixed effect, 2SLS, almost never order probit and order logits. Another thing we can do is to extract the adjusted R-square out of our coefficients and try to understand, are we good when it comes to predicting well-being? Do we understand what well-being means? Well, here you can see with this density curve that there are two modes. There is one mode that is centered around 15 and another one that is around 50. And again, the beauty of our well-based project is that we don't just have this number. We also know everything about the regression. And what I can tell you is that actually, if this is bimodal, is because in the first spike around 15, these are the cross-section regressions. And the 50 are the panel regression. So about, I'm going here to give you big numbers, about a third of happiness can be predicted with the classic social demographics that you find in surveys. And another third comes from the individual fixed effect. And I think, Caspar, this matches your machine learning paper, right? You end up with a third explained with survey data. So that's good. That's confirming your machine learning paper. Good. So then here, last time I presented this paper, I had a strong reaction from someone in the audience telling me but who cares about adjusted R-square? We're not here to predict well-being to to one. I don't know. It's an open question. I mean, at some point, if we want to talk about well-being, we might want to try to get to the bottom of it. Then there will always be problem with measurement error and this kind of thing that's going to prevent us from going there. But maybe there are some improvement to make. All right. So also something about the estimation sample. Who are we studying the most? If we want to claim that we understand what well-being is, sort of as a concept, well, we are definitely not there because our papers are all about the UK, the US, Australia, and Germany. So Latin America, we know not. It's not like we know nothing. It's underrepresented. African countries, underrepresented. Asian countries, underrepresented. So we really need to make an effort, at least in econ, to try to understand well-being. I mean, if we want to have this claim of saying we understand what well-being is. The same with the age distribution. We focus mostly on the working age population. Here you can see the probability to observe someone of a given age in a regression. And so people between age 18 and 68, you will find them in most of the regressions. Kids, we don't have them. Over 70 years old, it's like as if you don't exist, while actually there are people over 70, of course. So we're not good on this matter as well. When it comes to gender, it's more balanced. You can see we have most of the time samples that are made of 40 to 60% of women, so we're not doing so bad on that matter. And so, Caspar, last question for you. How much time do I have left? 5, good, okay, so I won't make it. So, about the estimates, how do they look like? Here, you have the 50,000 point estimate represented here using their standardized value against their p-value. And one of the things I wanted to do absolutely with this database was to try to document whether we have p-hacking also in well-being. And so if you are not familiar with p-hacking, Abel Broder would define it much better than I could do, so I'm taking directly this from his paper. It's the variety of practices that a research might consciously or unconsciously use to generate better p-values. And so how do you detect p-values in practice? In practice, you see a p-value when you plot the distribution of your test, and right after the 10% threshold or the 5% threshold, you see a small bump. In the year AER, JP, and QG, actually, Abel found that there is a surplus of p-values after the threshold 1.96. So there is p-hacking. People try to get the second star, like 2 stars looks better than 1 star. So here, when you look at the economics of happiness, well, actually, we're doing good. Here you have the distribution of the test, and you can see the 3 lines are the different threshold, p-value threshold. And you can see it's actually quite smooth, right? So good job to us. But here I'm tricking you because I'm showing you the printed and unprinted coefficients. If we look at the printed coefficients, unfortunately, there is a jump. There's a bump after the 5% threshold. So I talked about it with Abel a couple of weeks ago. And here he told me that could be p-hacking, but that could also be publication bias. So we need to do more work to really understand whether it's p-hacking or not. But let's say that the economics of happiness, we're not doing better than the rest of the field when it comes to these kind of practices. And then with the last 2 minutes that I have, 4 minutes, yes. Okay, so I'm going to talk about finally what is in well-based, what are these coefficients telling us? So we can use them in different ways. We can use them to try to think about some debates. One of them that we have always in the field is what is the relationship between age and well-being? Is it linear? Is it a U-shape? Well, we can use well-based to have a better understanding of these debates. So the thing that was the most striking for me when I started this project, it was to see that age is actually in 2 papers out of 3. You always have age somewhere in the picture. And this is the covariate that is the most frequent in papers. So here I'm going to focus for the sake of time on cross-section regressions. So here you can see the different approaches. When you work with well-being and age, there are 3 approaches. You do the quadratic age, you do linear, or you do age categories. And so you can see that in the field, on average, we do more quadratic, but like quadratic and linear are the 2 the most used approach. Again, here I'm just showing you the number of regressions which did it. They use this technique. But what about their success in getting significant coefficients? Well, you can see that when you use the quadratic age relationship, you are more likely to have significant results. When you use age as a linear fit, you have like less than 50% chance of having significant results. And not only 50% chance, less 50% chance to have significant result, but most of the time they're actually borderline significant. They're very close to the 10% threshold. While with the age square, it's extremely significant. And not only is it extremely significant, it's always a U-shape. So here, another thing I would like to show you is that we can also use the age categories. We can plot them and try to understand, is it like, what's the best fit? Is it linear or is it a U-shape? And actually, even when we use the age categories that are less parametric, they are more agnostic when it comes to the effect of age, we actually see all the time, most of the time, U-shape that actually showed up with the age categories. And so I'm going to finish on one thing to go back to the presentation of Kuhn this morning. If we want to use well-being to do, this income equivalent, this marginal rate of substitution, well, we need to have a decent idea of what the effect of income is. And well-based can exactly be used for this kind of exercise. We do not only pick one paper. We actually look at all the papers that have an income effect, and then we can try with, meta-regression, meta-analysis technique. We try to get what is the average income. And so here you can see, just for the sake of the exercise, I plotted the effect of income in gray and the effect of unemployment, for instance, in black. And so you can see that there is variation across papers. So just picking one coefficient could be, it could have a huge impact on your marginal rate of substitution. So if we do a meta-analysis, we end up with an MRS of 5.2. But I'm going to leave the marginal rate of substitution to Caspar because he's going to come back to it. But then what we can do is try to predict to what extent the effect of income or unemployment changes on the basis of our technical choices, like if I'm using individual fixed effect, if I'm putting many controls, if in my sample I have women, if I have old people or young people, we can see that all these parameters actually influence the effect of income. So if we want to have fine-tuned effect of income, we need to have these parameters into account. And so Caspar is telling me to shut up, and he's right. So I'm just going to finish on this. If you want to help us, because this is a big project and we have been working on it, only the two of us so far. So if you want to help us, there are two obvious ways for you. The first one is to support us in expanding the well-based data. So if you have yourself produced papers with life satisfaction regression and covariates, and I haven't reached out to you, I haven't harassed you, by email saying like, can you send me? No. If you already have some of these papers ready to be shared with us, please do it. That will help us expanding the database. Second thing, if you can think about a research proposal, if you have an idea, something that would make good use of wellbeing, then just reach out to us. We haven't put this database together just for the two of us. So if you have projects in mind that would fit this database, please let us know, and we'll be very happy to work with you guys. Thank you very much.
Questions? Oh, there you go.
Thanks, Anthony. I'm going to send you the code of my QG paper. Now, so two things. One is something that I think you could do, which is super cool. I didn't know about wellbeing, which is multiverse analysis. That is to say, an analysis where you are replicating, so you have a research question, but you are taking different reasonable steps to answer this question and see how sensitive the estimates are to these reasonable choices. So this is something that, I mean, it's an amazing data set to make this type of exercise. On a little bit of a more cheeky note, how many of these papers use BHPS, SOAP, and Hilda? It's a lot of papers, but I suspect a lot of them use the same data sets now.
Yeah, well, I mean, very quickly on the first response. Okay. Yeah, no, on the first response, that's what we want to do with the paper. That's exactly what we want to do this step, to understand how do we get these papers. And just here I can respond also very quickly to your question. I told you it's about the UK, it's about Australia, it's about Germany, it's about UK HLS, it's about Hilda, it's about SOAP, right? And we have Gallup, we have GSS, but we have to do better. We have to do better if we want to claim something about well-being international level.
Thank you for this amazing contribution, both of you. What do we do about evaluating causal confidence in your database?
Thank you. That's very interesting what you're doing. I'm thinking how to think about what you're all this information that you're accumulating. And I'm thinking about the example that you're giving about age effect. I'm saying, okay, there are H square and there's linear H and they don't find significant effects. But isn't it that if we don't find significant effect of H, we just make it as simple as possible. We just put linear H so that people don't complain about, it's not that making it quadratic makes it significant. It's also making, having it not significant may cause you put it just linear.
One last.
Yeah, I would like to join the others in expressing this is really a big contribution to the profession, I think. Fundamentally, how do you think about double counting? I think is there how to think about the information content of a new regression? And I think that is something substantial to think about, because that's the point made earlier.
Well, then now I'll go fast. Reverse order, double counting. This is something we're actually struggling with quote, because actually in the here you might have seen sometimes I showed you information at the paper level, sometimes at the regression level. It's exactly because sometimes I don't want to fall in this trap of double counting. If I give you what is the effect of income, there are papers where they have 1,000 regressions, and in some other paper they have 2 regressions. So we need to be mindful of this. So this is why when I showed you information at the paper level, is because the issue of double counting was really completely crazy. About age, what I would love to, I completely agree with you on everything. what I would like to do is to go back to these papers, you know, and check if you did use a linear age. Is it because the U shape didn't work? You know, I want to explore the possibility. Why did you choose? And that's something I would like to do. So I'm happy to see that you're also converging toward this. About causality. For the moment, we don't have yet a dummy, but what I would love to do is to have a sort of dummy saying this is causal, arguably. And one of the things I was thinking about, and it's not perfect, was to go back to the papers and see the language, try to understand within the language, like, are we talking about association or are we talking about causality? And on the basis of the language used by the author, then assign a sort of score of causality. Not perfect, but I don't want to be, I don't want us to be the judge also of what is causal and what is not. So we could just gather and spend a day reading papers together and say, oh, this one's causal, this one's not. But if we could find a sort of way of automating this, I think that would be better, and also have a sort of score that would be continuous. But that's definitely something I would like to do. I would love to show you the effect of income, causal, not causal. That's something in the pipeline as well. Thank you very much, guys.